Hello everyone, and welcome to Judy's Creations in Crochet. And today is February. We're into a new month, February the 6th, 2025. And we have joining us my little co-host who just wanted to jump up in my lap while I was sitting here trying to get things ready. So I thought, well, let's have him stop in and say hello. You all seem to enjoy seeing him. I'll lift him up a bit so you get a look at his cute little face. And as well as having a hello from him, we have a hello for the new month from Kiki. And she's all ready for Valentine's Day, as you can see. And you know what? Her dress would fit in so well with the February mal, wouldn't it? She's wearing red and white, no black. This would have been some hand-dyed minis I had, and the white is, my favorite, latte cake. I use latte cake whenever I can. And she'll go up there to watch over things after we're done here today. It's too far up for me to get to right now. So I have a lot to cover today. I have notes, and hopefully I cover all the things I need to. So we're going to move right along, and you know where we always start. Well, first of all, I should welcome everybody to my channel. And if this is your first time, I certainly hope you enjoy what you see and that you will come back again someday. And you know what? Push the subscribe and you'll always know when I have a video out. I only come once a week, so I don't overload your inbox. And for those of you that are returning subscribers, I really do appreciate your faithfulness, and I appreciate your comments. And if all of you could give me that thumbs up, as I've heard them say, it doesn't cost you anything. And apparently the more likes I get, the higher you get in the algorithm, so I can reach more people. Because those of you that are here tell me how much you do appreciate what I do. And I am so happy to hear that, because I really, really enjoy putting these videos together and thinking of things to share with you each and every week. And for those that don't know, I am coming to you from Chatham, Ontario, the southernmost, you could all repeat this now, the southernmost tip of Ontario and Canada. And I have given my geography lessons in the past if you really want to know more. So then I start with what I am wearing, and I am going to talk about what I am wearing, but not right now. It has a place, it has a place later in the video. So we'll wait on that. Now, last week was the slideshow showing the items you all made in January. And I was really, really pleased to see the number of you that participated. But it seems somebody got missed, and I heard about that afterwards. But I went back and looked, and I do not have an email from this person. But right now I am going to show the item that Jennifer made, and Jennifer is from Georgia, and she made this hat, and I'm showing you the picture. And I think what happened was maybe she thought she sent the email and it didn't get sent, and I didn't get it because she said she didn't get a response from me. So that's why I emphasized last week when I gave all of the rules and information. If you do not hear from me within, say, 3 days after you have sent me the email, get in touch with me again so we can see if it went astray, was the wrong email, or maybe you forgot to send it. and we'll catch it before the day when the slideshow comes out and you were missed. So apologies, Jennifer. I have looked more than once and I did not have the first email. So important that if you don't get a response, get in touch with me. So the next thing I want to talk about before we get in to the business of the day is once again to remind you that I am doing a make-along for the winter starting a week from Friday with Diane from My Pink Bathtub. We're going to do the same thing we did last year. If you remember, I did one with Gina. And same idea. We have picked a pattern that has a comparable crochet and knitted version, both designed by the same designer. And we have talked to her and she's okay with that. So we're going to do a kickoff with a live show next Saturday. That will be February 15th, the day after Valentine's Day, so it should be easy to remember. And what more can I tell you? Oh, it's at 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, which is noon Central Time. That's Diane's time. And of course, you can work it back out to the West Coast. For those in Europe, like the UK, there's a 5-hour difference, so it'll be like 6 o'clock and 7 o'clock through most of Europe, and I can't tell you the rest. You'll just have to go and figure that out. And I thought of something else. Oh yes, you can mark it on your calendar and go there to my website. There'll be a notification come out at 1 o'clock, but if you want to be reminded ahead, this is how, if you haven't already seen it, if you go to my homepage. So when you're watching this video, down below, you'll see my name and logo beside the title. If you click on that maple leaf logo, it will take you to my YouTube homepage. And on the homepage, and everybody has it, you know, it'll say videos and playlists and whatever. It will say live there. And if you click on live, it'll bring you to a page. I took a picture of it, so here's a picture of what will happen when you click live. And you will see one video that it looks kind of wintry, and it has my name and Diane's name on it. Judy's Creations and Crochet and My Pink Bathtub are both on there. And if you click on that video, it'll open up like most lives and show you where you could type in the chat. Of course, it's not active yet, but that's what it'll look like when it is active. But over, I believe, to the far right, at the bottom of the screen, the video, it has something about notification. I think it says notify. And if you click that, it'll then make a record that you are interested in being on the live, and it will notify you when the live, it may, I think, notify you a half an hour ahead saying that it's coming in 30 minutes, and then it'll notify you again when it's active. And I hope there will be lots of you there. This time we're going to make an asymmetrical shaped shawl. So triangular, asymmetrical triangle. So I hope many of you will be there. And most of my followers I know are crocheters, but now this is for crochet and knit. Some of you do both. And if you have knitters that don't follow me because they don't want to follow crochet, maybe you can tell them about it. And hopefully we will see you there on February the 15th. And I'll mention it again next Thursday, which will be just a couple days before we come to you live. And I think it'll be a fun time. All right, so that's the business taken care of for today. So this is the first of the month, and the first of every month, again this year like last year, I'm going to do a stash down. And a stash down is done many different ways. Different creators keep track of what they have done by counting the labels off their yarn, by tallying up the grams they use, or tallying up the yardage or the meterage they use. There's lots of different ways to keep track. And honestly, I don't care if I have 5 labels. I don't care if I used, 750 grams or whatever. It doesn't really mean a lot to me. I am, as I said, one of my goals this year is to shop my stash. I want to put a dent in my stash. And right at the moment, yarn is still coming in. And I want to see a difference. I should probably keep a tally of yarn in as well as yarn out to know that I made some progress, but I don't intend to keep buying a lot of yarn. A few reasons why I did buy some of this yarn. And I will be buying yarn that is different. As you know, I mentioned I'm on a quest to get different fibers and talk about the different fibers so you know what these fibers are and the advantages of them and so on. And I'll do that a little later in the show. But right now, I just want to see progress in using my stash. So first of all, I am very, very proud of myself this month because I started 7 projects and I finished 5 of them. And I'm going to start right here. This is one I finished on the 31st. So I hadn't had it done. I was working on it. I think I mentioned it last week. And this is triangular shaped until you get to a point and then you go straight and you seam it up the back. So it is a cowl, and the pattern makes a nice edge for you. I think I made it bigger around than I was supposed to. And then, of course, it blocked out. But I don't mind that it's looser around the neck than they show it. And can you see, maybe you can see it in here, see the sparkles? This is one of the yarns I got from, I don't have the label, from Sweet Georgia Yarns. You may remember in the fall, I got these 3 yarns from Sweet Georgia. They are all Cash Luck Spark, and I got this one as well. So that's what this is. And I have 25 grams left, so that's bigger than most minis. So I should be able to put that to use somewhere. And the Cash Lux yarn is 80% superwash merino, 10% cashmere, and 10% stellina. So I still have these 3 that I will use for something else. And this one will go in my mini collection because there's as much as a mini, more than a mini. The pattern is called Happy Place, and it is a pattern by CJ Brady. I think maybe 1 or 2 of you out there have made this. I have made her Happy Shawl in the past, but this is Happy Place. And I will put links to any of everything I talk about pattern wise. I will put down below. Now I know a CJ Brady pattern when I make it, but I don't know all of the other designers, but their name will be in the link below. Now that's the first one I finished. Before I go to the others that I have with me, I'm going to flash a picture up here, and that is the blanket that I made for my niece. And of course, I took it to her almost 2 weeks ago now and gave it to her, and she seemed to be very, very pleased with it. So that's number 2 that I finished. Then you saw this last week. This is the Maryton Shawlette. I made this for our Mal. It's close, at least the blue is close to the colors in the butterfly. I thought it kind of matched the lighter green too, but it's darker than the actual picture. But that is, and I showed you that last Thursday. So that's number 3. I could find the edge of it so I can fold it up and put it over the chair. Number 4 was the skinny scarf, and it's quite long. And this, by the way, the yarn in that last one was pearlescent fingering from EFA. For those that are new, you'll hear me say EFA a lot. That stands for Expression Fiber Arts. I am not affiliated in any way, but you'll hear me talk about it and encourage you to sign up to their newsletter, because you get a free pattern every week. So I buy a lot of their yarn, and this cubby back here is full of EFA yarn. This scarf is made with pearlescent worsted from EFA, and they're very silky. Pearlescent is 50% merino, 50% mulberry silk, and it is very, very nice. Feels very silky. So that's number 4. And finally, number 5. I showed you this, I believe, last week as well. And I think one thing I neglected to mention about this is that the yarn here, the creamy colored yarn, is the Calming Cosmic yarn from EFA. And when I was using it, I wouldn't have raved about it. I mean, it's really pretty because it has all these colorful flecks in it. So it is like a tweed. And it has a stellina running through it that is 3 different colors. And I'll try to show it again. Here is the green. I have this in 4 colors. Green, blue, red, orange, and then that other that I thought was black, but it's more purpley. But I don't know if you can see the twinkling in it. It looks more gold here, but there is a red one, and if you look closely, there is blue. The stellina is 3 colors, and the yarn feels very nice when you're holding it, but when you were stitching with it, I didn't think it was as nice as I originally thought. But after washing it, this feels very, very nice. Yeah, it feels as nice, maybe in some ways a little better than the minis feel. Because of it has a bit of a halo to it, and it gives that soft factor. So I quite enjoyed working with that, and I want to make a wrap that's made just entirely in 1 or 2 of the colors of that Calming Cosmic fingering. And I see from Shandy's video this week that they're going to come out with another color that really, really speaks to me. So you know I'm going to be getting it, because I really do like this yarn. You know, I had problems with the pattern. I would not recommend it, but the one thing I did learn was a new construction, and I'm thinking that I could make this again with the center. I wouldn't use her instructions other than how to get it started, but could use my own stitches and start the center, because what I like is that it gives a very nice visual look of the striping in the center, and then the same colors getting carried into the wings that go out on either side. So I'd like to use the idea of the construction, but my own stitches and pattern kind of thing. I'll just use her idea of how to make this center part and then build off the sides. That I probably will do again, because there's a lot you could do with it, with a lot of different yarns. It would be perfect if you had something like a mandala, a self-striping mandala, and you'd probably need 3 cakes, one for the center and then one for each. Although, you know, with mandalas or some of the others that repeat more frequently, like say a skinny cake, then you wouldn't be worried about each side. Like with these minis, I had to match the same color each side. But with a self-striping cake like that, or a more variegated one, I'm trying to think of one like Ferris wheel, you wouldn't have to worry about how it matches up color-wise. So that's some ideas, and that is number 5 that I finished. And you know what? That I can say I took 5 yarns out of stash plus a bunch of minis. 5 yarns and a bunch of minis. I am quite pleased at that. Now I want to talk briefly about the 2 I started and didn't finish. And I knew I wasn't going to finish them. The first one is the pattern that I started that you're going to see on the 15th of February. I wanted to start it to make sure it was the pattern that wasn't going to give us a lot of trouble. You don't know until you try it. And I didn't want there to be any real problems with it. So I did start it. I have a long way to go on it yet. And I'm not going to show it to you until a week from Saturday when we do our live. So that's the one thing I started with no intention of finishing, but I got some work done on it, as well as these 5. And the other one I started was my blanket. And you know, I started it with the intention of working on it most of the year, all year. And I went back to it even just this last week and worked on it a little bit more when I had some time between projects, because you know, I have started the February mal and I couldn't start it until after the video, so I did work on this for a bit. So I finished the first strip that is multicolored, and it is far longer than I needed it to be. So I'm going to say that it's probably at least 5 feet long. If I'm sitting in the chair, it's probably going to reach up. Yeah, I didn't even care if it came this high. I wanted it to cover my lap, so if it came, you know, up to my chest was fine. But it's a good length. And I finished one solid strip. And I don't know about the rest of you, but when I do whoops, this is starting to come out because I don't have a stitch marker in it. I was that far in it the last time, and so I added, that I showed you, I added all of that to this one, and I've left the strand live because I don't know about the rest of you, but when I put 2 that are going to be side by side together, and hold them up. Now you see the one is shorter than the other, the solid one. Now I just probably pulled out a row, but every time I hold it up, it's different. I could stitch it looks like it needs 3 or 4 rows, and then I'd hold it up and it would be longer than this one. That's why I've kept it live, because I figure very soon I'm going to attach them. And then if I get to the bottom and I need more, or I need to tear it out, I've got a live yarn. So that might be something I do in the next week. Now, that's not it. I also started my next row of varying colors. And I am just reaching in and pulling out whatever color comes out. The only thing I will do is hold it next to whatever end I'm working at and make sure I don't have the same color side by side. That's all. But I got that much and that much again on the gray one done. So here's something you might help me with. When I put this together, and I have attached many things in many different ways, I do not want a raised ridge between the rows. So I'm not going to slip stitch it together. I'm not going to single crochet it together, although that would keep them lined up the best. Whip stitch, suppose I could whip stitch them. That might be the least intrusive. I hope you didn't get a funny screen, because it told me my battery's running low, so we're going to have to move along here. I would like to know what you think is the best way to join them to get almost an invisible seam, because I really do not want a busy seam or a bump. I don't want a bump. So that's the progress I'm making on that. So that's all I have to show you about Stash Down. Now, I think I'm going to... So, sorry about that, but the battery was running out and I had to stop and go recharge my iPad, or I wouldn't have made it through the rest of this video. So that being done, and then I had to run out and do an errand and come back while it was recharging. So now I'm ready to move on and finish the video. The next thing I want to cover, I've been promising you this for several weeks, was talking about a yarn. I'm going to only talk about one yarn today, and then I'll talk about another yarn I have next week. So the yarn I have is this one from my glasses aren't on right. Okay, sorry. So this is the yarn I got from EFA a little bit ago, and it's opalescent fingering. I ordered a second one of it because it just feels so heavenly. Now the color is milk, and opalescent fingering is 60% merino, 20% Ramy, and 20% silk. And Ramy is spelled R-A-M-I-E. I'd never heard of it before, so I'm going to tell you about that. And then it has 400 meters or 437 yards in it. Now, in the past, I have done videos talking about the benefits of merino, and I think alpaca and silk, and probably cotton. I'm going to go back and look that up and talk about it again in the future. But for today, because we are running a little shorter of time, I'm only going to concentrate on this Ramy. And this is something I've never heard about, so I went online and did a little bit of research. And the first thing I found out is that Ramy is a plant fiber. And it's a plant that comes from it's a fiber that comes from the Chinese nettle plant. It's also known as China grass, grass linen, and grass cloth. And in some of my reading, I found that Ramy is quite common, I guess, in actual fabric you would buy to make a dress or whatever. So it says that Ramy and wool are both natural fibers, but Ramy is stronger, more absorbent, and more resistant to shrinkage. And Ramy is also more breathable and is definitely less itchy than wool. They talk about the strength. Ramy is one of the strongest natural fibers, and it's almost 6 times stronger than cotton. It's also stronger when wet. And it says wool is a natural fiber, but it's not as strong as Ramy. Ramy is highly absorbent and can hold its shape after washing. Wool is a natural fiber, but it's not as absorbent as Ramy. This article did a comparison between wool and Ramy. Ramy is breathable and it's comfortable to wear, whereas wool can be itchy, as some of you know. Ramy is resistant to shrinkage and can hold its shape after washing, but wool can shrink. I think if you wash it carefully, but hot water is not good. And other properties, Ramy is resistant to mildew, bacteria, and other microorganisms. And it's also naturally stain resistant. Wool is a natural fiber, so I guess it's susceptible to some of these other things that were mentioned. So it sounds like Ramy is a very good fiber, a very strong fiber, a good fiber to have in our yarn or in fabric, and it'll make it stronger, it'll help it to not shrink, and it'll absorb water. So I have ordered a second skein, and my thinking was that I might make a wrap of some kind. Actually, this sounds like a yarn that would be good to have more of and make a sweater in. Yes, but I didn't order that much, and I really don't want to order any more of it. So I think I might make a nice shawl or wrap that I can use maybe in the summer because of its color. I don't believe they have opalescent fingering in any color but white. If they had some other colors, I might consider making something else with it. But that's the information I have on Ramy. And as I said, I have another yarn with a type of wool that I'll talk about next week, and it's here already. And I have another one on order from the UK, so maybe the week after we'll do something each week that I have something. So now moving on, the last thing I want to cover. I don't know how many of you follow Lynanne at Nina's Knots Crochet, but she did a video last week talking about using, she talked about a couple things, but the main thing was using a Swift and caking up yarn. And I think in the past I have had a question about caking yarn and what do I use, and I guess maybe I kind of forgot or it got lost in the shuffle, but I was thinking about it the other day. And then, wouldn't you know, Lynanne does this video showing how to cake up a ball of yarn. And I am going to put a link to that particular video in my description box. But after watching her, I, of course, had some other thoughts and comments to add to it, particularly since I do not use the same Swift that Lynanne uses. So I asked her, I did not want to step on any toes and, do something somebody else has already done. But I thought maybe I could do just a small kind of add on to what she had done to give you a little more information about a different kind of Swift that I particularly like. So I'm going to interject here. A little earlier in the day, I videotaped my Swift and showed how to use it and how it's different. And I also talk about the cake winder a little bit as well. So I'm going to interject that video here, and then I'll be back to finish up. So to begin with, I want to take a minute to talk about the actual yarn caker. I have this one. It's very, very similar to the one that Lynanne showed in her video. I want to mention one thing about it. There are two different models. This one has the center spoke slanted, and when you turn it, it moves. And it has only one yarn guide that you can see back there that you thread the yarn through. There is another model of this yarn caker, and it has the center spindle sitting much straighter up and down, and it has a second wire guide for the yarn, and it goes back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And I'm going to put a picture of it up here in the corner so you can see the difference. I prefer this, and I'll show you why. The one that has the extra arm going back and forth spins the cake so that it looks like this. This one, where the center moves, spins the cake so it looks like this. Do you see the difference? Now you may say, so what? Well, it doesn't seem, by the look of it, to matter very much, but I find this version makes a nicer cake because this one with the arm going back and forth makes a sloppier cake, especially at the end. All of these loose ends, the last rows, they fall right off. And in fact, if you go too fast or you have too big a cake, I found a lot of my cakes were coming off. The outer layers were sliding off of the cake. So I didn't really like it. There's also a heavier model. So I switched over to this. And the only thing I want to tell you, because I had to try two different versions, is when you buy one, make sure to look at the area down here. You can see this is entirely encased in plastic. The one I had before this had this area down here open, and there are gears down there. And I found there were times when the yarn, especially near the end, would get caught in those gears and a little difficult to get out. All right, so I just caution you, I prefer this model without that second arm, and to make sure that it is encased here so the gears aren't open. And mine is just like the one Lynanne had from Knit Picks, but I got mine on Amazon. So the other thing I wanted to mention, different than what Lynanne showed you, is the actual Swift. I spent time looking at Swifts before I bought mine. And I'll tell you honestly, the umbrella Swift, and that's what Lynanne demonstrated, did not appeal to me. It looked awkward. The other thing is, this sits here permanently. You can see it's a fairly thin wood. It is a shelving unit at the side of my dining area. And it stays there permanently, and I have nothing close to it, and if I were to move my kitchen table over, it was too thick. Because the umbrella swift also uses a clamp like this to attach to something, and I didn't have anything sturdy enough, and honestly, the umbrella looked awkward to me. So in my research, I came across what's called the Amish Swift. And I'm going to even put it together for you because some people might think it looks complicated. But here it is in a very flat box that stores away, well, I put it behind the shelving unit. And first you have some dowels, I'll just put those aside. Then you have the base, so there's one piece. Here's the second piece. They interlock, so they go together like that. Then there are two long arms that slide out of the box, and they also interlock, and they have holes for the spindles and a center hole. So if you take the dowels out of the bag, you first need the short dowel, which goes in that center hole, and it goes in the center hole over here. And there is your Amish Swift put together, as easy as that. Then the last step is to put the spindles in the arms, and I generally just put them a few out. There's, I think there's 6 different ones, and they come with measurements, so if you know how big your loop of yarn is, then you would know how far out to do it. I don't know how big the loop is, and I don't really care. Here's my yarn, and as Lynanne said, you want to open it. I'm not going to, this is a yarn I hope I'm going to use soon. You shouldn't really cake your yarn. I have a lot of yarn that I caked before I heard that you really shouldn't cake your yarn until you think you're going to use it. So apparently being caked up stretches the yarn a certain amount. Now I'm sorry it's a bit busy here with the furniture of my room, but I think you'll be able to see how this works. So like Lynanne said, you have to open it up and you have to, you know, tug on it a little bit so that the strands loosen up. And you know what? One company's skein yarn is different than another, and a different base makes a difference. Pearlescent fingering or pearlescent worsted from EFA is probably one of the worst for the strands clinging. But once you have it open, all I do is set it carefully around the spindles. It's not as awkward as holding it and holding the other. Now this is obviously too loose. So I just decide, I think one more hole is enough to open it up because I don't want it super, super tight. And there it is, ready to go. Then of course you have to cut off all the ties so that you can. Now I have found that there's the beginning and end right there. I have found that there are some yarns that are poorly skeined and the threads crisscross each other in the skein. And when you have an Amish Swift like this, if you have to, you can lift this off. I wouldn't do much of it because you'll get tangled mess, but you can untangle it. I'm not too sure. Some of the things that I've had problems with, I'm not too sure how you would manage to untangle them on an umbrella Swift. quite honestly. This one only had one tie on the skein. That's very unusual because I find that 3 ties is the most common. But anyway, like you were told before, you thread and you put the yarn through there. Then you place this wherever is best to place it so that it doesn't hit things. And now I can cake up my yarn. And you don't want to sit and watch me cake the whole thing, so I won't finish caking it. But you can imagine as that finishes, this will empty out. Now I only want to add one thing, and that was Lynanne's comment about how to use the cake once you've finished using it. And like her, I take the label, and this one ripped, and I fold it up, make it as small as I can, and then I lift the cake from the spindle, and this goes in the middle. I have told you before that I then use this because I can put this will fit in the middle without a problem, and I can take my wool genie and put it right through the center of that label, and then I do an outer pull, I guess you would call it. I work from the outside of my cake. There are odd times when I guess you might have to work from the middle, but as I told you, this one isn't bad, but there are some, and I've used them, that even though you've done a good job of caking it, you will get some yarn bar from the center. But the main reason that you want to work from the outside edge is because it's creating less friction and a little less tension on your yarn, so you don't pull the yarn as much, and you don't have the friction of it coming from the center. Also, when you work from the center, the cake eventually collapses in and you get a real mess. But she said if you want to know how to make a center pull, just check some other videos. Well, there's nothing complicated about a center pull. You wind it the same way, but when you're all done winding it, you see the thread that you threaded through the middle here into those little slots. You pull it out, you pull that thread out, and you make sure that there's the end. You make sure it's pulled out from the center of your cake, and you have your center pull if you really feel a need to use center pull. But I really strongly recommend you work from the outside of your cake. So I wanted to introduce you to an Amish Swift. I find it easier to work with. I don't have to clamp it on any kind of table, so I don't need two things real close that I can clamp on. I find it very easy to work with, and I don't know, to me it's less awkward than the Umbrella Swift. So I just wanted to show you that as an alternative or a comparison for the other models that are out there. And this is no more expensive, I'm sure, than the Umbrella. You can get it on Amazon. I've heard people talk about it. So that is what I use to make my yarn cakes. All right, so we're back. I hope you found that somewhat useful. It probably would be better if you saw Lynanne's video first. I should have said that before I did the cutaway, and then checked out my video with the add-ons. So I just wanted to show you, I finished caking that skein of yarn that I was showing, and I did pull out the center pull. But I will not be using the center pull like Lynanne. I prefer to use from the outside, and I will be using my wool genie, and you can see I left a hole in the center that will allow me to put this on my wool genie and use it. But I wanted you to see how neat this skein is. That's the last thread there. It's always a little bit loose that I've clipped. But I want you to see how much neater this is than what happens with the other cake winder that I was talking about. And hopefully I had a picture of it for you to see, that other cake winder. I don't like it as well. So that's what I wanted to tell you today, and what I wanted to add to what Lynanne had to say. Now, one more thing I want to do before leaving, and that is I haven't done giveaways in a while, and I felt bad that I didn't do very many giveaways during the Christmas season, other than I did do patterns because of our mail strike. And I tend to like to do giveaways, but I kind of waited until, first of all, the mail had to be back in running order, but I also wanted to give them time to catch up on the backlog. And I get the impression that things are moving fairly smooth now, although I have heard comments that certain size parcels were backed up. I heard this a week or so ago, so I don't really know what state they're really in, but I think it's moving smoothly because I have mailed a couple of things and they seem to get to their destination without a hitch. So I thought it's time for me to get back and share some of my yarn. And for those of you that might watch Diane at My Pink Bathtub, and again, you know, we're going to be doing a live next week, plug. I sent her part of the Advent I got at Christmas. There was an Advent I got that really wasn't to my taste, and she kept commenting how much she liked it. And I knew she was doing a Valentine's Advent, you might call it. She has 14 skeins to Valentine's Day. So I took my Advent and I split it in half, and I sent her half of it. I still have half of it, and I split it again. I think there's a couple I might keep, and I have some that I am going to give away to somebody. There are 6 here, but I might include a couple more. We'll see. But in the meantime, I've done a draw. I picked a video from January, and no special word because I didn't prepare you. And you know, I said this before, I am going to regularly be giving yarn away, and I will not prepare you because I do not want all the trolls and that look for giveaways. So I'm not going to mention there's a giveaway, and I'm just going to pick a video every here and there and do a random name draw and give the yarn away. So here's the lucky person. I'll put it up here on the screen. I'll fill the screen. Tammy Sabo 2797 is her YouTube name. Tammy lives outside of Chatham. Too bad I didn't know where and I could deliver it to her, but I will put this in the mail after she gets in touch with me. Congratulations, Tammy. Please get in touch with me to give me your mailing address. Tammy is the one that made my kitty cat here that Diane gave me for Christmas. So this is going out to Tammy. I don't know if you use fingering weight, Tammy. Hopefully you do. Anyway, congratulations, and I will continue to be doing random giveaways just whenever the mood strikes me. So Next week is almost Valentine's, the day before Valentine's. So I have a Valentine's gift to open, and will I have a finished object? Right now I'm working on the February mail item, and it will get finished by next week, but I don't know if I'll have time to do another item. But I do have a yarn acquisition here. I can show you that, and who knows what might pop up in the next week. So I hope to see you back here then, and in the meantime, happy hooking.